Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who is helping me facilitate this podcast. Today we featured Dr. Frank Douglas for a second episode, where we continue discussing his book, originally titled Addressing Systemic Discrimination by Reframing the Problem, and very recently renamed Until You Walk in My Shoes, a reframing methodology to overcoming systemic discrimination. We discuss culture and the various aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion, how those three can work together toward having the right culture to have the processes and procedures in place to address any systemic cultural problems that exist. Could be in the family, could be in the workplace, anywhere where there are people. Marty, it was a great discussion to stimulate thinking. What are some takeaways our listeners can gain from Dr. Frank?
Dr. Frank mentioned it's very important when you're working with someone that they realize that maybe you have walked in the shoes that they did, and you can really relate to them and help them. But he also talked about reframing the problem, or maybe addressing another problem to find a better solution.
And the better solution affecting, in a positive way, more people. Let's listen and learn together. Dr. Douglas, thank you for joining us again. Dr. Frank L. Douglas for a second episode. Dr. Douglas, our first episode, and I want to encourage our listeners to go back to that first episode where you chronicled a part of your life, and with no attempt on your part to minimize the earlier struggles you went through, you have overcome a lot of your life's past, and you have written several books, but we left discussing your book that was then titled, and you've retitled it, Addressing Systemic Discrimination, Reframing the Problem. The three words, reframing the problem, just caught my attention so much. I became just totally intrigued with that title. And I thought, Doctor, how about if we have another episode, and there could be multiple additional episodes unpacking this. Dr. Douglas, great to have you back with us.
It's a pleasure to be back with you. I really enjoyed our last conversation. There were many thoughtful things you brought forward.
Dr. Douglas, my understanding is you have retitled the book, and based on some feedback, can you tell our listeners what to look for now with the retitled book?
Yes, the feedback that I got was that one of the main themes of the book is encouraging people to walk in someone else's shoes. And the present title was a little bit academic. And so the suggestion was made, which I accepted and have implemented, to retitle the book Until You Walk in My Shoes, with the subtitle, A Reframing Methodology to Overcome Systemic Discrimination. So it's just been republished, and it's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, etc., with the new title.
I just like that so much. Everything of what the book is about. I'm going to just do a slight literary interpretation. You can't really know what I've gone through until you've walked in my shoes and you're walking beside me. That's a lot of what our podcast is about. We want people to know, our listeners to know, we're walking with you to help you overcome anything in life. And I really appreciate the way you have described a lot in your book, reframing the problem. I think of that, Dr. Douglas, as rising above the emotional aspect of whatever the situation is you're in. And in some cases, we are going above our supervisors, those who have created the problem, either created or, at least in the context of culture, we have a problem. But I'm going to rise above that, and I'm going to try to create a global solution to what I'm encountering. Dr. Douglas, I don't want to take us in a direction that was not your intent, but that is my application of what you're writing about.
It is a perfect application. And indeed, you have described what the book is about.
I think for me as well, we're addressing a mindset that we want to create in those, our listeners, your readers, a mindset that we can be above, but how do we reframe the problem such that we can get by, get past, get over, and provide a more global solution to the situation we're encountering? Is that the essence of what you wrote about?
Yeah, that is the essence. And we describe a process to enable one to do that. And I'm going to use the term aggrieved. Someone who is aggrieved, who feels that they've been discriminated against or been treated unfairly. How do you deal with that? So the process which we've developed is to first try to get that individual to step back a bit from the emotion. We have to recognize, of course, we feel the incident, we are emotional about it, and that's appropriate. But in order to move forward and find a solution, we have to step back a bit from the emotion. So the first thing we do is we have an intake form that's very brief. It can be filled 1 page, at most 2 pages, that asks the individual to basically list the following things, and they are 4. What's the desired outcome? Namely, what is it you would like to achieve? And so often, when we are aggrieved, we are so upset that we lose the big picture. We forget what is it we really would like to achieve. So, because we're just looking at the pain that we feel. So what's the desired outcome? What is the situation, as best as you can describe it? What is the environment that you're in? And in your words, briefly, what do you see that the real problem is? And what we ask the individual to do is to describe that using bullet forms, simple sentences, not a paragraph, because when it's a paragraph, we become novelists and the emotion takes over. And as those of us who are old enough to remember that detective show with Detective Friday, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Mm-hmm. So just state the facts. And that's why it can be done in 1 page, at most 2 pages. And so that's the first thing we do, is to get the aggrieved individual to fill this out. What's your desired outcome? What's the situation, as you see, just the facts? What's the environment, as you see it? Again, just the facts. And how do you see the problem? And looking at that, because we do believe that any organization, including the family as an organization, there are two very important things that are fundamental. They're equity and inclusion. And equity are the policies and the rules by which we would agree to play. Inclusion are those behaviors that show us that we are valued, we belong, etc. And those are the two critical things. So we have a panel we call our VIP, Victors in Overcoming Injustice in Their Professions. These are individuals who have walked in the shoes of the aggrieved before. They have experienced such or similar types of problems, and they have overcome them. So the first thing that happens is that the aggrieved individual feels that they are being heard because they are discussing with individuals who have walked in their shoes and who understand the problem. And so they're being heard, which is really fundamental. When you're aggrieved and you're explaining, a lot of times you feel nobody's really listening to me. They're not getting it. So this group of VIPs, as we call them, they then look at the case and try to identify in that case what are the issues around equity, namely in the organization. And we described it very simply. And you mentioned one of them. What are the processes in the organization that ensure that one will be treated fairly? Are there evidences of privilege, namely there are groups that are treated differently? And what are the prospects for the individual? Namely, is there a relationship between the quality of the work I do and the recognition that I get, be it promotions, be it increase in salary, whatever. So those three things, privilege, processes, prospects, are dimensions of equity. And in inclusion, it's actually easier to describe exclusion because when you're excluded, you feel it, you recognize it. And so we look at what are called microaggressions, namely microassaults. Are you being, in a nonverbal way, being demeaned? Microinsults, namely, is your group, your tribe, your ethnicity, is it broader? Are they being demeaned? And then micro-invalidations, namely, are you not being recognized for the value that you have for the accomplishments that you have made? And so those are the three parts of inclusion. And so one looks at the case to identify their evidences of these. And then we do a simple thing. We actually do a plot of equity versus inclusion, typical 2x2 matrix, 4 quadrants, in which you can really identify a quadrant where people feel they're treated fairly, they're included, etc. High equity, high inclusion. Those individuals are motivated, they are engaged. Similarly, if there's low equity, low inclusion, those individuals are really very distressed, very unhappy, and often they're the individuals who are looking to find another job, etc. So you can describe these 4 quadrants, and that's what we do. And after we've done that, we go back and we look at the desired outcome, and we ask ourselves, given where this individual sit, the quadrant in which they presently sit, are there opportunities on the equity side or on the inclusion side to find a better problem to solve to get them to their desired outcome? Now, what's a better problem to solve? A better problem to solve is a problem which not only would help the aggrieved individual with their problem, but would also benefit others in the work unit. And that second part is the differential. And as I've said to individuals, just think of this. You're aggrieved. You're going to go to your manager, your supervisor, to let them know that you've been treated poorly. Immediately, no matter how well-trained or empathetic that individual is, that individual is in a defensive posture. You go, however, and you say, here is a problem that's affecting the unit. I think if we were to address that problem, productivity would improve, better interactions would improve. And in fact, if we were to do that, it would also address my problem. That's a different discussion to have, in which then that supervisor will become engaged because that supervisor can see the benefit for him or herself as well as for the group, and not just for you. So that's the whole reframing bit, finding that better problem to solve and reframing your problem.
I see such a global benefit in your approach to this, doctor. I am the aggrieved individual and I can be self focused. I can be so egocentric that I just care about getting over my grievance. But can I think in a broader perspective of how to not only overcome my grievance, but devise a solution that has a benefit to the larger global organization, which could be family and not just a workplace? It's a mindset change. I want to ask you a somewhat elementary question, but the term discrimination, I think, can be a very all-encompassing term. It could be age discrimination, could be gender discrimination, could be racial discrimination, could be any number of things. Have I framed this properly, and certainly reframe my mindset if I need to?
You are just right on target. Some individuals said to me, why didn't you just simply say systemic racism? And I said, no, racism is actually based in discrimination. And whether it is, as you said, whether it is gender, whether it is religion, whether it is sexual orientation, whether it's age, it's a series of ideas that are prejudicial to someone else, that is not benefiting someone else. And it may be conscious bias or unconscious bias, but the impact on that individual is the same. So let's deal with discrimination generally. One of the things actually that has happened, and I will be having a workshop, a group approached me and they said, this is a technical group, and they said, we don't have discrimination in our group, but we have a lot of conflict, and we think this approach can help. And I said, well, I had not thought of it that way, but let's do the following. Why don't you bring me 2 cases and let's discuss and let us see whether indeed the methodology fits. And so we did that, and we're going to have a workshop for their comrades.
I think a workshop is just absolutely great because for me, as I read your book, as I'm having this discussion, for some people, some of our listeners, it's a mindset shift. It is getting away from the triggers, or at least knowing the triggers, being aware of those triggers that could cause anger in me, and establish a broader mindset of, okay, at the moment I am angered, but I want to think through this. And for me, it involves critical thinking. How can I make this a more global solution that will benefit everyone? I want to encourage our listeners to think about this and to broaden our scope of how we can benefit others, not just ourselves. Dr. Frank, you've just stimulated my thinking, and that's what I love to do. I can think of many broad applications for what you've written about.
Well, thank you very much. And an important part of it also, why the walking in someone else's shoes, is the actual activity, if you like, of looking at the case from different aspects and walking through it and working to try to find a better problem to solve. One of the Confucian philosophers said something to the effect, you tell me something, I will forget it. You teach me something, I will probably remember it. But if you involve me, I will learn it. It's the involvement bit of walking in the shoes, looking at the case, trying to find a better problem to solve. The truth of the matter is, we like to find quick, easy solutions.
I agree with you. We like to, but I'm thinking that as you described, we're talking about in some cases, we need a cultural change.
And that requires work. You have to work at it. We need a cultural change. And in fact, that diagram I talked about, the matrix, basically defines 4 cultures. One culture where equity is high, inclusion is high, and you are in a very engaged culture. Everyone is engaged, motivated. The opposite, equity low, inclusion low, that's a toxic culture. People distressed want to leave. Or you might be in an area where inclusion is actually very high, but equity is low. Namely, the rules are such that although the frontline manager and the co-workers are working well together, the rules are not supporting them. And so everybody's a little bit anxious, What if the guys who are responsible for the policies, etc., change their mind? Will we be able to maintain this culture? Or that's an unsafe culture. There's another unsafe culture where equity is high, but inclusion is low. Namely, those who set the policies, they're trying to do their best, but they have a frontline manager who is moving in a different direction and is not encouraging the behaviors that value people and get people to feel they belong and they can contribute, etc. Those individuals are hopeful because they hope the leaders would recognize that and either train that frontline manager to be better at inclusion or find a better frontline manager to get to the inclusion behaviors which they would like. So it is about culture. You're just absolutely correct. And so we refer to it as a equity inclusion culture matrix.
To the leaders, particularly, I'm thinking now who are listening to this podcast, they may be thinking, as I'm listening to you, Dr. Frank, we need a cultural change in could be family, could be organization, wherever we are. If you are the head person, doesn't matter what your title is, your role, your function, the lead person, my opinion, you are responsible for the culture in your organization, whatever that organization is. And don't think of yourself any less a family culture or a business culture, but you're the head of that. Doctor, I'm thinking at your workshop, maybe for the person who says we need a cultural change, but I'm not exactly sure where to get started. How do I identify the fundamental aspects? Is there an aspect of defining core values? Is that part of what a cultural change and what defining a culture is?
Yes, the interesting thing is that many organizations have the mission statement, have the guidelines, rules, and philosophies. And the unfortunate thing is often no one is paying attention to it. So often you don't have to go very far. You just simply have to look at, okay, what is the mission of the organization? What are the guiding principles we've agreed on? And let's look at each case and see whether indeed, we are following those, or actually the reason we have a problem is that one aspect or another aspect of it has been transgressed. It is less for me, ever so often we think, okay, what we have to do is to come and just redo everything. Well, I'm a physician, so I will tell you, when someone comes to me when I was practicing and they were ill, I didn't immediately think, oh, they need a new body. I started to ask them questions to find out their symptoms. Then I examined them physically to see where the problems were. And then once we put those two together, we addressed that problem. And guess what? When that problem was addressed, their body was whole again. So we didn't say you need a new body to fix that small problem, even though it was very troublesome.
No, you're right on. And I want to take our listeners back to one of your opening statements in reframing the problem. Don't write pages about it. Just make some bullet statements. And the same type thing for mission statements, vision statements. Some companies write volumes about it. And you think, oh my gosh, I can't remember all of that, but I can remember some bullet statements, some of the very poignant points of that. And doctor, I just think maybe that's what some of us need to do. Just get back to the basics. And what are the most salient points of our culture, our company, our values that we want to remember and have out front, but it needs to be something that we can all remember. We don't want to have to memorize volumes of a book. It's something that we want to have easily recollectible.
And the important thing of what you just said is we need to recognize that the young people, they will not read volumes and volumes. The reason TikTok is so popular is that everything is basically less than a minute, 30 seconds, etc. And so and the young people who will be the leaders in a few years, they are growing up with, we need to get to the core immediately. We need to have very clear, crisp, short messages. And then we have the discussion. We don't want to have many, many pages and then try to distill it to find what's the core point. Let's start with the core.
Yes, I'll address one aspect of inclusion from my viewpoint, and I think you have very eloquently alluded to it when you discuss that part. But inclusion to me includes, I will know if you're speaking from the heart. Do you care about me? Are you willing to listen? Or is my conversation with you more of a monologue rather than a dialogue? If the culture is such that you have just entered the throne room, I want to make sure we understand the hierarchy here. Yes, I have responsibilities as a leader, but part of my responsibility is to take care of your concerns, to make sure I have processes in place. To me, that's a part of inclusion. I care enough about what you're thinking. I want to listen to you. That to me is just one aspect of being an effective leader and creating a culture of inclusion.
Yes. And this is why I named the company Safe Haven Dialogues, because it's about having the dialogue and being in a place where you feel you can safely have that dialogue. But it's about having the dialogue.
I'm glad you mentioned your company name, Safety and Dialogue. I do believe that a part of us having a very inclusive and workable environment, one of inclusion, I know where I belong, and I know my people care about me, is a matter of caring, reaching out. I want to have a dialogue with you. I want to create a safe space. I use that term, safe, meaning I want for you to know I want to be appropriately vulnerable. I use that term in the context that I'm willing to tell you some things that I've been through. I'm not seeking your sympathy or anything of that nature, but I'm confident enough about myself and some things I have overcome. I just want you to know I too have experienced that. I want to listen to you, and I want to help you overcome whatever it is you're experiencing. If you feel discriminated against, let's together work this through. Together, we will be the safe space. Together, we will, because I value you and what you have to offer this organization. That, to me, is a lot of what your book is about, Doctor.
No, that is right on point. It led me to recall about 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years ago, I was invited by a university to run a one-day workshop for their senior faculty and staff, because they were really concerned about some of these issues of inclusion, some of the younger faculty members not feeling that they're being affected, they're being treated fairly, they're not being included in some of the decisions. We had a wonderful day, and at the end we were sort of wrapping up and trying to identify what are, again, just those 4 or 5 key things, that they would agree to work on. Okay, so that's all you need, 4 or 5 key things. And so they went back and forth, and then one of them said, well, what would you do? And I said, why do you ask that? Well, we're not sure. And I said, well, that's interesting, because every one of you started off as a young faculty member. All you have to do is to think back as to when you were a young faculty member, what were the issues you had, where you felt you were not included, etc. That's all you have to do. You did not, parachute into your positions without the experience of having been a young faculty member, starting off, etc., whether it was in this university or some other university. and they were very good-humored about it. They all sort of smiled and laughed and then got the task done.
Oh, that's great. Doctor, for the listener who is intrigued and is thinking about, or at least wondering how they might be a part of your workshop, have you gotten far enough in developing that to know how our listeners might be able to join you in your workshop?
Yes, they can contact me. They can write to team at safehavendialogues-llc.com. That's team at safehavendialogues-llc.com. Just write us a letter and we'll get back to you and we can discuss what your particular situation is. We'll design a workshop together.
Would that be a one-on-one type of workshop? Would it be virtual, in person? How would that be done?
We prefer in person because of the interaction. However, we've done a virtual. In fact, the one coming up the end of October will be virtual.
That is great. Doctor, I'll tell you, on behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you for all of the research work you have done, your caring heart for organizations, culture, diversity, equity, inclusion, helping everyone feel they are a part of the team. When we have connected relationships, when we know we're a part of, when we know you're listening, when we know you care, we can work through anything. I'm a believer, Marty and I together. When there's harmony at the house and there's harmony at home, and if you go to church, if you're faith-based, there's harmony in the church, we'll be able to work through anything and everything. Not to say there won't be challenges. It does mean, my opinion, we'll be able to work through anything because we have willing people who want to look toward a greater global solution. Thank you, Dr. Frank, for helping us reframe the problem.
Well, thank you for the invitation again, and I enjoyed the conversation as I did the last time. Really do appreciate it. And I really actually appreciate you clearly have read the book, and I really do appreciate that.
I was absolutely intrigued with the book, Doctor, and extremely well done. I love researched books, and you've got calls to action, and anything that stimulates my thinking to a call to action, that's all of what I'm about, and I believe that's a lot of what our listeners are about.
Very good.
Thank you, Doctor.
Wonderful rest of the day. Thank you very much.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper Culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.